Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everybody to the OCFC Board of Directors meeting. Good evening. My name is Dean Tambori, Vice Chair of the Orange County Funding Corporation. I'd like to officially welcome everyone. It is September 21st, 2022, and the time is 5:39. I'd like everybody asked to rise for the pledge of allegiance. The flag's outside. Flag out here.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome our two newest board members, Mr. Mark Green, welcome, and Mr. Giovanni Palladino, welcome, and Bill, to the roll call.
Yes, we have our chairman is absent, Michael Torelli, with Dean Tamburi.
Here.
Susan Walski.
Here.
Mark Green.
Here.
James Rinaldi.
Here.
Vincent Odock.
Here.
Giovanni Palladino.
Here.
All right, 6 of our 7 members are here. I'll also introduce our guests if I could, sir.
Yes.
Of course, staff, myself, Bill Fioravanti, Chief Executive, with Marty Boras, who I'm thrilled to be here in person, actually. Our new administrative assistant. Really glad she's here. We have Mr. Dennis Brady as our AV consultant online as well. Our attorneys are not here. They're both ill. Ms. Susan Katzoff, our general counsel, may be joining us a little bit later for part of our RDA session, but she's not well, so we're going to give her a little time. And we have one other guest, Mary Beth Bianconi from Delaware Engineering. She'll be presenting with me a little bit later.
Hi. Okay, and then we have the proof of notice that was sent out to everyone's on page 2. As we see that is there. And then are we going to do the introduce of the bond counsel?
We won't, because he won't be in
Okay.
person. We'll wait till he comes in person in October.
So then we'll move on to the minutes. So we have the minutes of August 17th of the board meeting. Unless anyone has any suggestions or changes to that, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve them.
Motion to remove minutes as presented.
Second.
Second.
Thanks, Jim. Roll call.
Yes. And I understand if a couple gentlemen want to abstain, so as long as we get our 4 yeses to make this pass, but you know, I think you just call for all those in favor on this.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 4 ayes.
4 ayes.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, so 4 ayes, motion passes.
And then we're moving on to the committee meetings, and then we have the James Rinaldi, the chair of the finance. Give us a report on that, Jim. Or is Bill gonna?
No, Mr. Rinaldi's gonna
Thank you.
give us right that.
There are a number of things, go over them. Number one, the August financial report, recommended approval, full board directors this evening.
You can keep going, I think, and then we'll do that all at the end. Yeah.
Yes.
August, September payables, detail voted to recommend authorization. We also changed where we're going to ask to give the staff authorization for up to 3 months to pay recurring non-changing bills such as rent, utilities, help to miss deadlines, remove some of the backlog. Also, the resiliency loan fund, 79% has been repaid. We're discussing options and collecting the balance. And lastly, the finance committee reviewed the proposed 2023 annual budget and requested a few changes, voted to recommend approval of the second draft of the 2023 budget with the changes by the full board of directors.
And you did receive, pardon me, sir, you did receive the updated draft of the budget in your packet.
Right.
So if there's any other questions regarding any of that, we can take a motion for all of those, correct? One motion?
I think we'll probably do one each, please,
Okay.
and we'll do roll call.
Okay.
Each, I guess.
So I have a motion for the August financial reports. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you.
Okay, Dean Tamburi,
Yes.
Susan Walski,
Yes.
Mark Green. Yes. James Rinaldi,
Yes.
Vincent Odock,
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
All right, 6 ayes.
Thank you, guys. And the motion for to approve the payables for August and September. Motion for that.
Motion.
Thank you, Susan. Second. Thank you, Vincent. Roll call.
Dean Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odoc.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
6 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you. And again, for the authorization to pay up to 3 months of recurring bills as discussed in the report. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Jim. Thank you.
Okay, Dean Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odoc.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
6 ayes, motion passes.
And again, for the OCFC annual budget with the changes recommended, can I have a motion to approve that budget as presented?
Make a motion to approve the budget for the 2023 OCFC portion.
Thank you. Second by Vincent. Thank you. Roll call,
Dean
please.
Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odoc.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
6 ayes, motion carries.
And if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the OC, Orange County Funding Corporation.
Motion to dismiss.
Second,
Second.
Jim, thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You gotta get yourself a new job. You gotta be careful. You gotta slow this down a little.
Yeah,
There's gonna be a mutiny.
Yeah, it's easy. Once you do it a couple of times, right? So again, hello, everyone, one more time. Again, September 21st, 2022, we'll open the meeting for the Orange County IDA Corporation. It is 5:45 PM. Bill, roll call, please.
Okay, Chairman Michael Torelli is absent. Dean Tamburri,
Yes.
Susan Walsky,
Here.
Mark Green,
Here.
James Rinaldi.
Here.
Vincent Odoc.
Yeah.
Giovanni Palladino.
Here.
Right. All 6 board members in
Yes.
attendance here this evening.
And the proof of notice is attached. It was posted correctly. Thank you. And again, we're going to go over and wait for our council, and we'll go to the minutes. So we're going to ask for approval of the minutes of the August 17th, 2022 IDA Board of Directors meeting. I have a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Susan.
Second.
Jim.
I
Second,
think
roll
you could
call.
just, yeah, I think you just maybe ask for all in favor.
All
on
in
this one.
favor?
Yeah.
All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
All right, motion carries.
Okay. And
Glad we
then.
brought you some water today, Sue.
Mhm.
Glad we brought you some water today for all your motions and everything.
So that's the motion of the minutes, and then we'll move on to the committee.
Yes, Mr. Rinaldi will give our report on that as well.
Okay, on the finance committee, we reviewed the August IDA financials, voted to recommend approval by the full board of directors. We reviewed the August, September payables, voted to recommend by full board. Recommended the full board give staff authorization for up to 3 months to pay recurring, non-changing bills such as rent, utilities, help to miss deadlines, and being charged late fees. And then lastly, finance committee reviewed the proposed 2023 annual budget, requested a few changes. We then voted to recommend approval of the second draft of the 2023 budget with the requested changes by the full board of directors.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. So we'll start off with the ask for a motion for the August IDA financials.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Sue. I'll second it.
I'll do a roll call, sure.
Roll call.
Dean Tamburri,
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Here. Yes.
Mark Green,
Yes.
James Rinaldi,
Yes.
Vincent Odoc,
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And now for the approval of the August, September IDA payables as presented and come from the Finance Committee. I ask for a motion to accept those.
Make that motion.
Sue. I'll second it.
Okay, Dean Tamburri,
Yes.
Susan Walsky,
Yes.
Mark Green,
Yes.
James Rinaldi,
Yes.
Vincent Odoc,
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the same as for the other, we're going to also do the approval of the 3 months of recurring, non-changing IDA bills as presented from the Finance Committee. Ask for a motion for that.
Motion.
Thank you, Sue.
Second.
Second, thank you, Jim. And Bill will do a roll call.
Dean Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odoc.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And again, for the 2023 IDA annual budget with the changes made and put in your packets from the Finance Committee. I'll ask for a motion to accept those. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sue. And Bill, roll call for the budget.
Dean Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odoc.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. On to the, you want to begin with the shovel ready, or you want to do the vendor?
Let me go right in, I'll stay right in order, especially since we have our guest here.
Okay.
I've been talking ever since my interview with this group about this idea of the shovel ready initiative. And I don't want to steal her thunder, but of course the basic idea is that we're almost out of sites, at least identifiable, developable sites. So we really want to get a robust inventory of what sites are available, and then look to be able to kind of go to the next level with that analysis. And really, the way I'll put it is help allow Orange County to dictate our future rather than just take what's coming at us. So we did, after a very thorough review, multiple interviews based upon our respondents to our RFP. Actually, it was an RFQ, a request for qualifications for firms to help manage the shovel ready program. We selected, I recommended, and you selected Delaware Engineering. They have an office right here in Goshen, actually just down the road. I was actually, as I mentioned last month, part of a corridor study that Delaware led with the town of Montgomery IDA that was very successful and just a great process. So if I can ask Mary Beth Bianconi, partner at Delaware Engineering, just to give us a few minutes of an overview, and then I'm going to be sharing what we're going to be looking for is you authorizing me to enter into a professional services agreement with them. And I want to be clear about that agreement. Our attorney is reviewing it, so your approval will be subject to her review. And we will only pay Delaware for the work that they do. If we stop for some reason midway, it's inherent in the agreement that we'll only pay for the services that were rendered up to that point, okay?
So it's an as-done contract, not as-to-do.
Yeah, I can talk about that a
Why
little
don't
bit
you do
about how it works.
Mary Beth, can I maybe put you in a different, so that you're on the camera as well? Yeah, I know you don't want to miss that.
Over there.
It's difficult, but can I put you in this corner here, Dr. Ordak? I'm sorry,
Sure.
she'd be right behind you if you don't mind. Just for full transparency.
Grab a chair, so that's the box. Okay, so I have a little handout for folks. There should be more than enough of these. It's just a little, if I didn't slip that up right, please just share. So as Bill said, my name is Mary Beth Bianconi. I'm a partner with Delaware Engineering. We are not from the state of Delaware. We're actually from the Delaware River watershed here in New York State. So just a couple counties over. You were saying about driving through Sullivan. That's more or less the location, right? And our office is literally across the parking lot. We are in the old Goshen Music Hall. We've been there. We opened our office during the pandemic here in Orange County. But we've been working in the county for many, many years. And I just thought it would be good to give you a little bit of an overview about kind of why do this, as Bill said, why do a shovel ready program? You know, what's the value? What kind of shovel ready programs have we been involved in? And then also I'll just tell you a little bit about the communities we're working with here in the county, give you an overview of kind of what we bring to the table here. So, you know, so why this? Why a shovel ready program? So as Bill mentioned, the county has been the subject of intense development interest really for a very, very long time. But in recent years, we're all aware, a lot of logistics operations, those kinds of things have had a lot of interest in being here in the county. We're at the crossroads of some major highways, and I forget the exact statistic, but something like a third of the population of the Northeast United States is like, you know, a 2-hour drive from here. So for logistics, it makes a lot of sense. But, you know, so And that has been, certainly there have been efforts on behalf of the county, on behalf of the Orange County Partnership, on behalf of municipalities and other agencies to connect commercial real estate brokers, landowners, and the development community to make those projects happen. But it's really very much been driven by the market. So the marketplace has said, logistics is needed. X marks the spot on Orange County being a great place for logistics operations. So they're coming to you, and the communities are sort of responding, as opposed to the community saying, okay, what kinds of economic investment benefit the community the most, right? So it's kind of flipping that model and saying, if we want to, we're still going to have folks who are going to be interested in us regardless. But if we want to set the table for a particular type of development, what are the steps that we could take to attract that type of investment? So shovel-ready programs do a great job of helping set that process in motion. So it's a matter of control to a degree, helping again, kind of rather than take all comers. It's what kinds of people would we like to try to attract to come here? What types of investment? What types of jobs? Shovel-ready programs are really good for doing that. The value to the development community. So to the development community, time is of the essence. The more time something takes from the day that they want to seal a deal to the day that they can have someone in the doors of a building and making money is very valuable. So having sites that are ready, that don't need to go through a long municipal process, that don't need to go through a long regulatory process, where the water lines and the sewer lines and the power are all kind of right at the edge and have either been planned for or are really ready for that type of development. So reducing the amount of time it takes from someone saying, I want to build this thing, to when it's actually built is really valuable and attractive to the development community. Looking at my notes. And then another thing is certainty. So I think we've all seen, particularly in the last few years, some local processes where there has not been certainty. There hasn't been certainty on the municipal side, that if a particular economic investment happens, what would that future look like? There hasn't been certainty on landowners, for landowners to know that if they intend to have their property involved in the economic project, that it's going to happen, and that it's going to make sense. And there hasn't been certainty on the development community side, that if they come and go through the process, which is by its very nature very detailed and time consuming and important process, that at the end of that, they're actually going to have a project that is they're capable of investing in and then still meeting their business goals in terms of profit and employees and all of those kinds of things, and back to time. So certainty is a really critical aspect of the economic cycle, and conducting a shovel-ready site program provides certainty to all parties: municipalities, property owners, development community, and the end users. So that's a real key part of this. So my firm, we're a civil engineering firm. 80% or more of what we do is working for municipalities. So we work for towns, villages, cities, counties, IDAs. We work for a lot of IDAs, economic development organizations, planning organizations, to help build and sustain quality of life in our communities. Most of what we do is public infrastructure. So we do water systems, sewer systems, drainage systems. It's all the really boring stuff that nobody ever thinks about, yet it's the underpinning of everything that we do. We help communities. It's not just about the pipes in the ground. It's also about, if we put the pipes in the ground, what happens above the ground? Who's using the pipes? How are they being used? How is the investment being paid for? Is it the right investment at the right time, in the right location? Those kinds of things. So that's really what we do. We've helped a number of counties and other entities with this type of shovel-ready program. As Bill pointed out, in the town of Montgomery, right here in Orange County, we conducted a corridor study, which was really essentially to do a very similar process. We looked at the environmental features, we looked at the land use patterns, we looked at the regulatory structures, the infrastructure, and then the community's desire for economic investment, and kind of married all those things up and said, if we were going to again, back to that, set the table for a particular type of investment. What kinds of actions would need to be taken in terms of local land use laws? Maybe it's the development community, maybe it's the water system or the sewer system, the power, the telecommunications, those kinds of things. So right here in Montgomery, on town of Montgomery, we did that work. We've also done the same process for Sullivan County, the old Route 17 corridor, where there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. It was their commercial corridor. It's been disinvested in for a long time. They have public water, they have public sewer, and they very much want a diversified economy. So we work with the Sullivan County Partnership and Sullivan County to help do shovel-ready program in the county. We've also worked in Greene County, so just a little bit north of here, particularly the area that where 87 goes through, to help them realize some economic investment. And their shovel-ready program actually involved their IDA owning and creating industrial sites that then later got sold back to the private sector. So it's a slightly different model, but we've done a lot of work in that area. And then Otsego County, which is where Cooperstown is, where Oneonta is. We've done quite a lot of work in that corridor between the city and the village. There's obviously a lot of investment there, a lot of tourism investment, but it's a former industrial area. And it has the colleges in the city of Oneonta. And there's, again, a need to diversify their economy. So this idea of shovel-ready sites, and rather than, just simply waiting for the marketplace to find you, it's how do you set the table so that those folks who want to invest economically, you become the, one of their considerations. Remembering that this is competitive. Almost all economic investments occurring in a competitive environment where the person who's making that investment has choices to make. They could come to Orange County, they could go to a different county. So it's a competitive situation. Locally here, one of the reasons I know when I interviewed with Bill, one of the questions he asked me was, he said, the backbone of economic investment is infrastructure. And he knows we're sort of the infrastructure people, but he said to me, so where are you working in the county? So earlier today, if you joined us at 1:30, virtually, I was at the county legislature subcommittee meeting on the Orange County Sewer District #1 on the Herring Wastewater Treatment Plant and its future. We're the consultants for the county on that project, and we have been since 2014 or 15. So that's a long and complex project that involves, I think we are 9 to 10 communities here. So a lot of knowledge there. And then in addition to that, we're working in the town of Montgomery, town of Goshen, Village of Monroe, Village of Washingtonville, town of Wayanda, and I may be missing a few along the way. But in all of those, we're doing infrastructure work and that kind of underpinning of planning. So I'm going to kind of move on to talking a little bit about this project. When we were talking with Bill, when the RFP came out, we were talking about, Bill, as Bill said, it's one thing to have an inventory of sites, just to sort of have the map and know where are there properties that may have opportunities for economic investment. But it's another thing to go that next step and move them towards being what we consider shovel ready. So a shovel ready site, this has probably been discussed before, is one that theoretically, at least, a person who wanted to make an economic investment could essentially walk in the door, and the process has been put in place where the pathway is set, and it's a relatively defined process to go from I would like to make an economic investment to I actually have a shovel in the ground. So that means that the site's been identified, the owner is amenable, the water lines are somewhere nearby or can be extended there. Same thing with sewer, power, telecommunications, that the land use regulations are appropriate for the type of use that's required, that the environmental review process has been conducted, that the municipality has made the movements towards bringing the public infrastructure to the site. So that's really what shovel ready is. So it's start with a list of sites, but then there's a lot more to be done. So this process, what we're talking about, the work that you have in front of you, is really that site identification process. It's step one. And then we have this lined out in phases, and this is based on our experience. How do we go from just identifying to actually having sites that are really ready to go? Second site phase would be environmental review phase. And the third phase would be grant writing and shovel-ready implementation, meaning actually get the water line to the site, get the sewer line there, upgrade the road, bridge, whatever it is that needs to be done. We're really focusing on phase 1 in this, but we did want you, Bill and I discussed this, and he said, no, please make sure we describe, you know, that this is a continuum. This step is the first step, right? So there was a question before we get kind of into the details here about how the contract is structured. So on the I think it's the last page.
Page 7, are you talking about the tasks there? Or
Yeah, so
I think it's
on
page
the-
7 of the agreement. I just.
Yeah, page 7. It's also page 3. The tasks are kind of listed out on page 3 of this little handout that I just handed out. It's the one with the little chevrons, task 1, task 2, task 3. So the way that this agreement is lined out is by task. And so the language in the agreement says, you know, that the idea is obviously we want to go through the entire process. We want to get to the end. However, if somewhere along the way, for one of many reasons, and there does not need to be cause, so this contract can be terminated for convenience, meaning you can just decide you want to stop. You would notify us, and we would essentially work no longer than 30 days, but to get to a point of conclusion that makes sense, right? If we were in the middle of something, we would get to the end of that. We would send you a final invoice for the work to date, and you pay the invoice, and then we provide all of the products of our work that we have completed to that point. So if we've made mapping, you get the mapping. If we've done documentary research, you get the documentary research, it's yours.
To be on the materials.
Right, because I know, and I pointed this out to Bill, we've had some circumstances where other folks have contracts that say no matter where the contract goes, that the consultant owns the information at the end of the process. And to me, that doesn't make sense to me. If I buy a car, I own it. I don't, right? It's mine. I paid for it. This is not a lease. You're buying this. So that's the way that our contract is set up. And as Bill said, at the very end, there's the teeny tiny little 9-point print. We're very flexible. Our objective with our contracts is have them be fair and balanced so that we're all working on a level playing field. To the extent that your attorney has comments or questions, we will just work with you to figure those out. I will add that those little teeny tiny terms and conditions come from a body of documents called the Engineers Joint something commission, which is used by almost all of the engineering firms in the country. So we're all kind of work from the same standard terms and conditions. They're pretty typical, but so walking through those tasks, we're looking at 7 tasks in this phase. One of them is to have a project kickoff meeting. Bill asked me earlier, you know, when do you think we can get this meeting to happen? And you know, definitely in October. I would say it could be as soon as October 4th or 5th, which is not next week, but the following week, or it could be sometime the week of the 17th, which your board meeting is actually the 19th, I think. So it could be sometime that I will be away on vacation the week in between. So that's the reason why we avoid that week. But the project kickoff meeting, and the purpose of that meeting would be really to confirm the scope, make sure we're all on the same page, we all understand it, and set some expectations about how we're going to work together going forward. When we're reporting back, what kind of information we should be receiving, confirm the deliverables, make sure that we're all really comfortable with what's going to come out of this process. Bill and I have had a number of conversations about making sure that there's some web-based products that come out of this, because obviously the days of people going to libraries and looking things up are unfortunately long gone. I still love libraries and I go to them a lot, but having a web-based product, so whether it's interactive mapping, whether it's reports or site like flyers or brochures, identifications, connections, linkages to other involved parties where we want people kind of feeding into this information or having access to this information, That's definitely all part of the scope, and we would kind of outline, at least preliminarily in the kickoff meeting, what are we really thinking about? Because we want to begin with the end in mind. We want to make sure that we're doing the steps and collecting all the information that we need to make sure we give you the products that you really need at the end of the day.
And if I may, Mary Beth, the reason we're talking about an intranet or, you know, some sort of web based repository is that we want it to be something that we can access, but our partners in economic development locally can as well. We want to strengthen partnership, municipalities and such. We want it to be really a living repository for those very data rich
think it's
site inventory.
A tool for commercial brokers nationally as well.
Yes.
For
And
sure.
I think that's important to have out there because we want to attract national and international companies. And they're going to start their research on the web.
You are absolutely
Right.
right. Mhm.
So how do you like, when I'm just like looking through, it was like, how do you determine, you know, which ones are, isn't there a lot of information out there already on which properties or like you're designing water treatment facilities and you're probably saying, okay, it has to be built for future use, right? Correct?
That's a great question.
So there's a lot of those out there already. So, you know, we said we're going to gather, there has to be all that information out there somewhere anyway. Now, how would we choose lot A or B as
Right.
opposed to, is it interview with the owner, doesn't want anything to do with it or whatever? And then how much do we, or you would ask, I guess for grant, how much would we expend to, you know, extend the pipes
Right.
and things like that?
Those are
I'm
those
just
future
curious.
phases that it's TBD on the dollar
Yeah.
amount. Because we'll see where we are at the end of phase one, what kinds of sites, how much extension you need before we determine if we do some generic environmental impact assessment, something to get a switch over.
So if there was a site that was commendable to everything, right? The owner, everything
Right.
seemed very, so from there again, you would come back and we would say, okay, let's go through the next step, the next
Yes.
phase and approve
Yeah.
that. And then obviously it goes on to the next schedule.
Yeah. So let's walk through, because we're kind of, you asked the
Okay,
right
yeah,
questions.
no,
Let's
but
kind of walk through the steps and we'll explain how we get there. So after we had that kickoff meeting, which again, you know, don't think, okay, I got to bring all my ideas, big kickoff meeting. It's just to give us some guidance, right? If things come up in the process and we say, hey, can we do this? As long as we can kind of fit it within the scope and the budget, absolutely, right? So that data gathering review, I think to your point, there's an enormous amount of information out and about, right? Almost too much, right? It's information flood, right? There's all kinds of stuff. What we do in the information gathering, there's really two pieces to the information gathering. One is that I have staff in my office who this is their job. It's what they do. They will get all of the information regarding topography. So how steeply sloped is all of the land? They will get the information regarding rare, threatened, endangered species, important cultural resources. They will gather all of that information, right? So that's all the stuff that exists.
Mhm.
They'll also get all the parcel information. So they'll have the real property data that says Joe owns this parcel and Susie owns that parcel and this one's 100 acres and that one's 300 acres. So that when we put all that stuff together, you know, Susie might have a 100-acre site, but if you need to be a mountain goat to be on it, it's not a very good site, right? But what we do is we gather all of the information in one place. So that's one aspect of this is data gathering. We get where are the water lines and the sewer lines and what about the power and all of that stuff that exists. We put it out here. So now that's true, it all exists. But if we don't apply something to that to screen and say, okay, well, what's the most important feature or what are features that really prevent development in a particular location, that data is kind of useless, right? So the other side of data gathering is to create criteria against which we screen these sites. So there are, and Bill knows these extremely well, there are basic site selection criteria that you can use. You know, is 90% more than 10%, 90% of property more than 10% slopes? It's gone. Nobody will build on it, right? Is it heavily occluded with wetlands? You'd have to go through a federal wetland process that's 3 years in the making and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's out of here, right? So those are the easy ones, right? And we can, that, believe it or not, we actually use a computer and the computer does that, right? It's very simple. We say, what are the big picture ones? But now let's talk a little bit more. Remember we talked about how right now you're sort of in that welcome all comers stage, and the comers are deciding what are the criteria that they're looking for. We want to kind of go the other way and say, okay, so what's going on out there in the world where we're aware, and my partner in doing this is a guy named Sandy Mathis from Mathis Public Affairs, and he's an economic developer like Bill. Bill knows Sandy, they've known each other for 20,
A little less, probably
Little
15 years.
15 years, something like that. So this is where Sandy comes in. What Sandy's going to do, because he has an awareness of what are the demands out there for sites, what industries are looking, where are they looking, what are the features and characteristics of sites that match up with their particular industry demands. So good example, the logistics industry, where they're generally looking for really large, extremely flat sites that are really, really, really close to highways, right? That's kind of the basics.
They don't even need water and sewer.
They don't really need water and sewer, right? Because there's nobody in that big giant building. It's full of stuff, right? So the big thing is they got to figure out how they're going to put in some kind of a fire sprinkler system, which usually involves a well and a tank. And they're good to go. Meanwhile, if we wanted to say attract maybe a surgical center, like one of those ones where you go in and you're there, the day surgery centers, they have a totally different set of criteria that they're looking for, right? Because they have certain, they don't care about having an enormous site. Most of those are multi-story. Their water and sewer demands are much higher. They need power. They probably need an on-site generator. So if the power goes off, they still have power. Can't have power off in the middle of the surgery. So there's a whole bunch of different criteria. So what we're going to do is take all that data that exists, get it, because we need it, right? And we have a lot of it, but we're going to get it, refresh it. It changes over time. Make sure we have the accurate data, really countywide, whole county. So we'll get all of that data, but then Sandy's going to come up with the industries that we're aware are out there that are looking in this geography. And again, you might be competing against Western Mass, you could be competing against
So the whole
Connecticut.
Northeast.
Right. So he's going to look and say, who's looking? And then in those industries that are out there looking, what are their criteria? So that now we have all of the site information, we can overlay the criteria. And it may be, Bill and I talked about this, it may be that we end up with, here's a suite of sites that could easily accommodate one particular type of industry. Here's another suite of sites that could accommodate a different type of industry, so that you have multiple options on the table. Some sites may accommodate more than one, wonderful, right? More flexible. But that's really in this first phase. So that's why it says includes evaluation of site demands and industry criteria, because we're kind of not, it's not good enough just to say, I've got land you can build on. If you've got land that can be built on, but doesn't meet some industry's criteria, nobody's going to come.
So I have a quick question, if I may.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So a lot throughout this county, zoning that is in place is antiquated zoning. Do you bypass those sites or do you include them in? For example, we have a lot of sites that are still zoned as AG. Clearly, they have not been farmed in decades.
Right.
So, and they need to be rezoned, to be quite honest. So do you work through that rezoning process and identify those sites as well, or are they bypassed over something that may be already zoned for what's needed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in Montgomery, we had this discussion because Montgomery was in the process. We were doing the quarter study. They were in the process of updating their comprehensive plan and considering zoning. Quarter study actually fed into that process. So no, we don't. While we look at land use, what is it being used for today? And we certainly evaluate the zoning. You know, what does the zoning law say? If we find a site that for all other metrics really matches up extremely well to a desirable industry that's desirable in that community and desirable in the county, one of the outcomes of this, when we get down to recommendations to action plans, one of the things would be for that site, the action plan is change zoning to allow the thing you want. Because those land use regulations are on par with getting a water line there, getting a sewer line. They're really all the same thing. If you don't have the water line there, you can't do it. And if you don't have the right zoning, you can't do it. So it would be one of the, so we don't just say, okay, this is zoned everything out. We're not gonna look at any of them. We consider it because it is important, but it's also got to be a discussion. And we have a public participation part of this too, with the community to say, here's an industry criteria that you have sites that could meet, but for your zoning. Is this a type of investment that you might find attractive? Do you want to think about changing your land use laws to match up with this opportunity.
Okay, now it makes sense. I mean, just to give you an idea where my head is at, I know biomedical is a huge field. We have a lot of fertile farmland here
Yeah,
that can be used for future medical development.
yeah.
It's the way we're thinking, just like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that would like biomed would be a good one of those industry sectors. So we're kind of aware out there, and Bill is familiar with this. So there's a community we guys I think of, there's the development scheme, right? There's sort of the municipality, there's the property owner, there's the developer, there's the end user, right? And that's kind of who we think about, right? But there's this other group of people who are running around the world, and those are the site selectors. So most of these industries that we're trying to look to attract, you're not talking to Susie, the president of that company.
No,
What it is Susie has hired a company that specializes in going out and finding and comparing sites for her business. So the site selector universe of people, they telegraph their preferred criteria for sites. So that's what we'll be looking at, is to say, okay, some of these site selectors, they specialize maybe in the semiconductor industry or in biomedical or in some of these other areas. So what are the criteria that they're generally comparing sites against? So that's what we'll be doing.
okay.
I'm looking at 3,
Mhm.
2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
Initial site analysis, in-depth site analysis.
Mhm.
Why do?
Why is there a difference?
Yeah.
Great question. Great question. So we're going to look county-wide, right? Your county is a big place with lots of communities, right? We're going to, in the initial analysis, we're going to work to identify potential economic development sites in every community. And we can't guarantee that every village will end up with a site, but certainly in every town. We're going to work to see if we can find sites that match realistic industry criteria in all across the county. That will be part of this initial analysis we were just talking about, where we're kind of going to use the computer to do the environmental analysis, and we're going to take some screening criteria and put them together and say what comes out the other end, right? So we're going to try to have it be a lot of sites. But then realistically, now that we've gotten out of the computer part and the human beings are going to start looking at it, there may be reasons why the computer says, yeah, this site could work, but when we look at it, or when you look at it, or when our partners look at it, they might go, that's never going to happen, because that site that you want to build, maybe pharmaceutical research and development, is literally next door to a high school. Those two things, those are incompatible land uses. That doesn't work, right? So we're going to take a big number of sites in that initial analysis, and then to get to that in-depth analysis, we're going to reduce them. And how are we going to reduce them? We're going to come up with some ranking and scoring criteria. And I brought some examples. You don't have a ton of copies of these. These are from another study that was done by Sandy Mathis, our partner. And I'll pass this around. I do need it back, but you can see he did this for the Albany Alliance. So this is the Albany County project, but this was for greenfield sites. So this is for sites where nothing's ever been built before. He has, the site information, and then he has criteria. Is the site of regional significance? Does it have very good potential for regional impact? What's the size of the site? Is the scale large enough that the investment could equal the cost? Site control. Who owns it? Is it an exempt trust from someone who died 20 years ago and the family hasn't figured out what to do with it? Well, that might be problematic. Or is it, Joe down the street who's in the real estate game and is right there to sell the property? Environmental conditions. Is it clean? Were there any former uses of the site that were less desirable that might have caused some contamination issues? The cost. Some of these sites will be for sale. So what's the land owner using? What's the infrastructure condition, right? You need water for this use, but it's 10 miles away? That's $20 million. That's probably not realistic, right? So that community support. Is this a community that embraces economic investment? Or is it a community? We have communities that say, listen, I'm really happy, just like I am. Okay, good. That's your choice. You live there. You get to say that. So that's kind of part of this is, and some communities may say, I'm okay with this type of investment, but not that. And that's okay too. That's fine too, but that's kind of part of this process. And then what's the balance of potential public investment, things like water, sewer, those kinds of things. And then the private side, given the industry sector, how much money can they afford to invest to get a site ready? Because it's different, right? Retail can invest very little because the margins are really, really, really small. Pharmacy can invest a lot because the margins are much larger, right? So they're all kind of different. So this is just an example. So we'll score, we'll have a scorecard, and every site will get a scorecard. And that's how we'll share all that information. And it is a little bit of a judgment call for sure. But I have been doing this for a long time. Bill's been doing this for a long time. Sandy's been doing this for a long time. It's kind of in whatever industry or whatever business you all work in, it's kind of one of those, I know it when I see it because it's my job, it's what I do. But we'll certainly go through that and discuss it. So we'll take these scoring criteria, and this packet, which I will pass around, has, there's sort of like a continuum, 0 points, no potential for regional impact, 1 to 3 points for limited potential impact, kind of, gives you some ranking criteria, and you literally end up with numeric scores. So the top sites, this one's for, and the way this particular one was done, and I don't know if we're going to do this analysis this way, but this one's segregated greenfields, so something where nothing's ever been built, infill. So say, there was already something there, but it's gone, and it's in the middle of a community. So infill lots, in this case, they're called urban sites. And then I think there's a redevelopment site where there might be something there already that maybe we just make use of. So there's already an existing building, but nobody's in it, or it's underutilized. So there's this scoring and ranking criteria, and there's 2 tiers. There's that initial go through, kind of take the big list and hone it down to a smaller list. And then that's where that in-depth analysis comes in. Now we roll up the sleeves. And this is the part where we say, okay, because at this point, all of this analysis has been done among us chickens using computers in our conversations. The detailed analysis would be that next step. Okay, this site's represented by a broker. Bill, do you know the broker? Shall we reach out to them? Right? So we can't do that for thousands of sites, but we can do it for a manageable number of sites that may then end up with that action plan. Let's say, okay, we found a site that meets the general criteria of an industry that the community wants to embrace. That is realistic to think that we could get the proper infrastructure to it within a reasonable time frame and cost, and the property owner is amenable to doing it. Now let's come up with the action plan. What specifically exactly needs to be done, by whom, when, and where does the money come from to pay to do it? So for all of the sites that go from the big to that next list that make it out of there, and we're really trying to get to things that, rather than talking about it, that can really happen in real life, that list gets an action plan. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it would be gas, like you could go from 500 down to 20 sites.
You could. So that's that. So step 2 is get all of the data and all the criteria. Task 3 is knowing all that, what's the universe of sites in the county? Then evaluating against these sort of known scoring criteria that, some of these things you might say, well, regional significance, why are we worried about that? Well, we get to action plans. And there is cost to creating shovel-ready sites. There's real money behind creating shovel-ready sites. But there are programs out there that support this. So many of those programs from state or federal government will look and say, if I'm going to invest my, in a competitive world, if I'm the state of New York or the federal government, I'm going to invest my money in the town of Ocean, pick one, right? Then what am I getting back? Does it just benefit them? Does it have a larger regional benefit? So that's why some of these criteria that you see, they're really intended to line up with going that next step. How do you get the grant money to support all of, and the low cost financing to support all the next steps? So recommendations, would be action plans to advance specific shovel-ready sites. At one point, when Sandy and I were talking about the scope of work, and I think Bill, you and I might have talked about this, was do we want to say it's X sites, 20 sites, or it's, it's some number? And we decided that rather than predetermine that, let's let the data guide us. Let's let the data tell us in the different, industries, how many sites do we realistically have that we can come up with action plans that are implementable, that will happen. So could be 20, 15, could be, could be 5.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
could be 5. Public participation, that's kind of in this, a lot of work will have been done by the time we get there. The public participation should be so owners of properties, brokers, people who are involved will not be surprised. It's not like public participation will happen. They'll go, wait a minute, that's my land. That will have happened in the prior step. But the public participation is really so that folks can understand. I think we all have this experience where we drive by a site that's being built and we go, oh, how'd that end up there? So really the idea here is rather than having people ask the question after the fact, or when it's already 2/3 of the way through the planning process before the planning board and people have their pitchforks and torches out, right, is to try to have there be some education and some understanding about what are the objectives of this program. The IDA is not in a position to go and say, this will be built here. That's not the job, right? It's to say, here's an opportunity that a property owner and a community can take advantage of if they choose to. Here's the path to make that happen. Does that make
Yeah, no, it makes clear sense. And we have to have as an idea transparency to the public, because otherwise we don't have their trust.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And the development process is, the role of IDAs is confusing to folks in general, and the development process is very hard for folks to understand, like all of the little steps that get you to that point. So part of this, I think, is public participation, but also an education
Exactly.
process as well.
Which is one of our major goals over the next 12
Yeah.
months, for sure. Now, I can add, being part of the corridor study in Montgomery, now that's a community that they've had a lot of growth. So there's been organized opposition to development and such. And I remember being part of that process, that it really diffused a lot of that, because it invites people in. It's, again, responding to transparency and having discussions and helping them educate them, helping them understand what we can bring where and what we can't and what the limitations are. I thought that was really fruitful.
I know there have been several larger cities throughout the United States that have done this, I want to say in the past 20 years, with a great level of success. If you look at Atlanta, if you look at Austin, and you look at Seattle, they've all done these types of programs because they wanted to attract a certain business. For Austin is they wanted technology.
They got it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this is all about, dictating our future. Yeah.
How do you limit the scope? I mean, are you looking at the entire county?
We're going to look at the entire county as a first cut.
I mean, it seems like an enormous.
It is. That's why we use a computer to do it. It's not a human being that's doing it. But I think to your point, you were saying you're from sort of.
Well, I have a couple of points.
Right, because the sort of the rural, there's some really rural places in the county that should stay rural. And that's okay. So chances are really good in those areas. We're not, then no sites are going to pop up. They're not going to show.
Once you determine that, which seemed a phenomenal job. Okay, you pick 89 sites. The next step, do you go to the owners of that property, or?
Yeah,
What's your?
When we get to that in-depth analysis part, yes. You're reaching out to owners, you're reaching out to brokers, you're reaching out. You need to do engagement. You can't identify sites and not tell the property owner that you've identified their site. Now they may say, I'm not interested,
Don't bother.
and that's okay. It'll say we did outreach. The property owner said they're not interested, and that's just going to be documented in the record. That's it.
Do you see, like, obviously real estate brokers, et cetera? I mean, do they contact you, like if they know there's property, or industries contact your office and say, hey, listen, I see there's a piece of property. What is it going to take for the infrastructure to get there? I mean, you get a lot of those calls as well. You must them all the time,
We
correct?
do, because we represent a lot of communities, right? So a lot of times what's happened is they've either called the town or the village or the city, or they've called Bill.
Mhm.
A lot of times Bill calls me and says, hey,
Mhm.
I'm looking at something over here and wherever, you know, is there a water line there? Is there a sewer line there?
Mhm.
Now, to your point, a lot of this information is available,
Okay.
right? The one thing I will say is the mere presence of, and I know Bill, you've experienced, of a water line or a sewer line or a power line or a telecommunications line does not necessarily mean that there's capacity
Mhm.
available for use.
Gotcha.
And that's where it gets a little more subtle, right? And different uses, you know, will demand different things from the public infrastructure. So that's where we have to roll up our sleeves a little bit and say, okay, yeah, there's a water line there. To your point, some of the communities that have zoned from, let's say, upzoned urban area, central urban areas, to say, okay, this was an apartment block that got torn down during urban renewal. It's, you know, now vacant, or maybe it's a city parking garage, and we want to turn that over and turn it into economic development. Some of them have done that without taking consideration. Well, and they go, yeah, well, the water line runs right by it. Yeah, except for the water lines, this tiny little water line, you can run a garden hose on and not build a 10-story building. And so that's where we're going to try to kind of head that off the pass and make sure that we're matching those things up.
Well, once you complete this and the information is made available to the IDA, does the IDA put it in a safe? I mean, are other IDAs going to be able to look at it, or towns or communities?
Yeah.
They'll all be able to take it.
That's the idea. We want it to be something that can be shared, be a resource to our broker
But
community.
we're paying for it.
We are, because if we don't do it, no one's gonna do it. So this is why we have the funds to do it, frankly. And, you know, I don't want to blow through our fund balance, but this is one of these prudent investments to enable economic development that really, and again, to keep saying this, in order to dictate what we want to bring here, as opposed to just take what comes. This is really about us identifying, being very proactive and strategic, and saying these are ideal sites for a data center or for a chip fab manufacturer, which, by the way, going back to Mary Beth's point about funding, the state has a new program, Fast New York, and they will give you really infrastructure dollars to help you bring services, augment power, bring water to a site, whatever, in order to bring a project. But they want chip fab. They want you to bring a premier project like that, like Global Foundries here. So, and that's what it's all about. So it's valuable information. And again, if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. But yes, we intend for our municipalities, our broker community partnership, ourselves, our partners in this effort to be able to use this as a resource.
And if I may, I mean, this is a, you mentioned a safe. This is a living, breathing
Yes.
Exactly.
thing. This
Yeah.
is going to change as development changes,
Correct.
as economics change. People you went to 6 months ago might come to you and say, okay, wait a minute. You know, so this isn't a one-time study and we're going to reassess this in 10 years.
Right. So
From my understanding, tell me I'm wrong.
You know,
No,
we
you're
certainly can continue to update it, absolutely.
So one of the products that Bill and I have talked about is, you ever had that experience where you go on a website and there's a map and you can click the parcel and all the information pops up. It says who's there and all this. So that'll be one of the products here, the sites that get identified and kind of make it to the bottom line, how many ever there are. That map, I was explaining this a little bit to Bill, is not static, right? So that map is hosted on whatever that means, right? But we would set it up in a way such that we can update the underlying information underneath it. So for this purposes, there's going to be some point when this project is quote done, but then you guys could choose to say, okay, annually, we want someone to go in there at very, very low cost and just update all the information that's behind it. If a property gets sold, update the information to say that the property was sold and what the use is. That's not a big, once you have it all created, it's not a big cost, but the idea should be that this is not static. It should be dynamic. That's the only way that it's useful. Right?
Are you going to reach X amount of properties and say, okay, that's all we can handle, or you're going to go for broke on everything that's available?
We're going to, so the idea is to filter. We don't know how many we're going to end up with. But what we would do is when we get to that part where we're getting ready, we're doing the in-depth analysis and we're kind of ranking sites. At that point, I know Bill, you and I talked about this, we're going to sit down with you and whoever else you designate to be involved in that process. And it's going to be a several-hour meeting where we'll go through and say, okay, this is sort of a yes/no process, right? Is this site something you want to advance? What are all the reasons we want to advance it? What are all the reasons that would not be good site to advance? And we'll put them in piles, and we're going to have to figure out how far we go. But we've committed to do all of the legitimate sites that you have. So that's baked in.
Good luck.
Well, our experience with these things, and Sandy Mathis and I talked about this a lot, is that these, as long as we keep our criteria in mind, and it's not that we're gonna, we're not looking to attract PetSmart. Not that I don't like PetSmart, but that's not what we're looking for, right? So it's not the universe of everything that gets built. It's not housing. It's not, right? It's actually a fairly narrowly focused set of industries that you want to attract to this county. That in and of itself is going to result in sort of filtering the sites down. So it's not going to be, I know in Albany County, it was like, I think in the initial go, it was well over 100 sites. And then the next filter got it down to like 50. And then in the final analysis, it was maybe 40. Like that.
But that's why I think it's so important to do this, obviously, because if you have the right industry come in, it usually like more of that type of industry continues in that
That's
area.
exactly
And
it.
that's what so they build one global foundries, it seems like, okay, now they're going to expand, now they're going to whatever,
Yes.
now they're,
Yeah.
so that's why it's important. I'm
Agreed.
fine
Yeah.
in the fund.
Yeah. And Global Foundries is a perfect example. So, they came to Saratoga County. They built in something called the Luther Forest Technology Park. A chunk of that was what was called the Malta Rocket Fuel site. So it was a research and development test site in the 50s and 60s. It was a lot of land that there was nothing built on, in the middle of Saratoga County, which is kind of unusual to find that kind of thing. They came there, they built their first chip fab. And then what happened was chip fabs are big, complex places. There's a lot of pieces and parts of the industry that aren't about the actual making of the chips, but that are about maybe running their own clean rooms. So there's these very, very sophisticated HVAC systems. So all the industries that support those HVAC systems had to come to the area and create offices and businesses to support. So there's all of these secondary impacts of this type of manufacturing, and a lot of manufacturing has that. So there's the core, I make big pens, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that goes into making a big pen, and all of that secondary stuff gets attracted as well.
You have to package it, you have to.
Well, and I just know that, every month, the Orange County and the region, the commercial brokers meet, and they are constantly, they have some lots. So they have national vendors contact them, who's got this, who's got that.
Yeah.
And we have, in this county, we have a very active group of brokers.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of it, and I know I see a lot of those, those spec sheets that come through, and I'll get to your point, I'll get the phone call to say, hey, we need, I think it's 3 million cubic feet of water. Is that what this says? And I'm like, well, okay, so let's really talk about what that number actually means and what site might meet that criteria. So again, to your point, it sounds like it's this giant universe. It's actually a fairly smaller universe, just because we can't make water. God made all the water a really long time ago. We still haven't figured out how to do it in the lab, right? We can get that hydrogen, the oxygen, put it together, but really there's only so much water to go around. A sewer, we have money, we can treat anything, right? In New York City, we treat the wastewater, turn it into drinking water, right? So not a problem, but water is a huge limiting factor. Power is a big limiting factor, right? Where's the energy going to come from? One of the things that we're going to find as we talk about industry sectors, a lot of the industry sectors that the state is incentivizing that they want to attract here, pharma, research and development, chips, those kinds of, because remember this whole onshoring, right? We all discovered during the pandemic that not a lot of this stuff is made here in the United States, right? So we're going to have an interesting time, because those industries demand a lot of water and a lot of power. We have this lopsided thing. We have sites where there isn't a lot of water and a lot of power. So it's that, which side of this equation, right? Where's the balance going to go? And how do we get there? So it kind of is a self-leveling prophecy to some degree, because again, we're not looking at retail. We're not looking at, it might be an offshoot of it, but straight retail, we're not looking at housing. We're probably not looking at colleges and universities, those kinds of things. We're looking at the type of investments that are in your policy to incentivize.
Do you look at multifamily or, major housing projects or no?
I don't believe, Bill, that that's a focus of this. Now,
It was not the intent,
it may be an
but it
offshoot.
becomes more of a pressing issue, frankly, and something
Housing
that
is a huge issue. Housing is a big issue.
it is something I want to have discussion in our initial kickoff the city, at least maybe identify some.
We should talk about it, and it relates to your point about zoning,
Yeah,
right? Because a lot of the lack of housing is driven by zoning that I think it's tough when we write zoning on a sheet of paper, we write the charts and the tables and stuff. It's really hard for people to know what that looks like in the world. So there's a disconnect.
well, and with housing, 'cause this is my world, a lot of it is infrastructure as well. And roadsides, can a road support an additional, 200 cars a day on it?
But if you bring in a production company that needs 1,000 people, where are you gonna put them?
Absolutely. That's why it's becoming more of an issue, because it's actually something that's becoming a barrier to economic development. You need to have workers for these jobs. They need to be able to, live somewhere nearby. So
And you have to have
It's more
workforce housing, affordable housing. That's your key.
It's a bit of a chicken and an egg, if you think about it, right? So it's not realistic to think that you would, or at least right now with our unemployment rate being so low, that you're going to have this giant pool of workers just sitting around waiting for the economic investment to show up to say, oh, I'm going to hire you and bring you on. Meanwhile, to get the economic investment, they're going to look around and say, well, where are my workers going to come from, right? So there's this tension between those things. Deciding what leads is a challenge. There's definitely a housing shortage. One of the things when we go through industries and we start looking at industry criteria and those kinds of things, that's one of the factors. What is not just the bodies, but what's the background of the bodies? What kind of education do they have? What kind of experience do they need? We are finding, I know, I think about years gone by, big companies, they would hire a quality worker and train them. Companies had training programs to create the employees that they wanted. Then for reasons that are bigger than our discussion, companies got away from that and expected employees to walk in the door pre-trained for their industry. We're now going back the other way, back to, let's say, post-World War II, right? Where companies are saying, okay, I have such specific needs for my workforce. It's unrealistic for me to think that I'm going to go someplace, literally anywhere in the nation, and find a ready workforce with the skill set that I need. And this is from literally, blue collar work all the way up to, high paid scientists and all these other things. So companies, I think, are rethinking that. And now the model is less the in-house training, it's more partner. So we're seeing lots and lots of partnerships with community colleges.
SUNY Orange just announced their partnership with Amazon. This
SUNY
career
Orange
choice
is
program.
An
where they're gonna
excellent
work together to
example.
Upskill their employees.
Fulton Montgomery Community College has a partnership with the cannabis industry, and they've created an entire, and they're going to be the pipeline of jobs for people working in the labs in these cannabis facilities. Whether you like it or not, it's part of the industry. It's part of investment. There's going to be a lot of investment. So that's part of the consideration, but it is a little bit of a chicken and an egg for sure.
I do want, Mary Beth, this has been great. I do want to keep everything moving.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have a couple of questions still? No. Giovanni, if you don't mind, I know it's your first meeting, I'll put you on the spot, but you work for a developer in the area. So any comments on kind of how you receive this, when you take the opportunity?
No, I mean, everything that you're saying is absolutely what we would look for. We actually, our development company, we actually have an in-house, I wouldn't say broker, but we have staff that goes around identifying properties across the country that would work within the silos of development that we do.
Right.
And zoning is absolutely a big part of it. Water, sewer, gas, if it has natural, energy is a big discussion today. Nobody will bring it up.
Yeah.
The type of land, infrastructure around the land. But if we can identify a piece and we know that we can get through zoning fairly easily. Through planning is a big part of it, especially New York planning takes a very long time. And it's very costly. And to be honest with you, in New York State, it's a big barrier for
Yeah.
development.
Absolutely.
It's a big barrier. So if we can identify sites and say, hey, look, everything's lined up, everybody's supporting this development, that would be very attractive for a developer, because you could burn, as a developer, burn through a lot of resources just doing your investigation.
Yeah, and without
That's the part.
certainty that that investment's gonna have a return. So that actually, and that's my last little slide here, that actually leads to what are those future phases, right?
Right.
So it's not enough just to identify the sites. And I think one of you guys mentioned, okay, well, why are we doing this? The reality is, Town of Montgomery did this process because they have an IDA that led the process. But most of your towns and villages and cities don't. They don't have staff. The planners are volunteers. They don't have the expertise that Bill has, that this group has, that you're pulling in to do this process. So if not you, then no one, because that's just the reality, right? But then what do you do with the list, right? So that's that action plan that comes out of this. But a big part of it is, to your point, in New York State, we have an environmental review process that can be protracted to a degree. One of the things about doing shovel-ready programs, and I think you mentioned some of the bigger urban centers, what they've done is they've conducted that environmental review as a generic review. People still, when you get the actual user, has to come in and do kind of a little environmental review, but it's a mini little environmental review. The big stuff has already been taken care of, right? So environmental review is really, really critical to this process. And then the last part is go get the money, get the investment lined up, because it's rare, and I think we've all seen this, right? That some of these big investments occur without there being some public aspect of it. Be that the town builds the water line and the town still owns the water line, so it's really, but it's in service to the industry, right? It may not be a direct, maybe indirect investment, but it is critical to the calculus for these projects. So.
If I could, just one other output that can really come out of this that could be very beneficial. We've worked in certain areas where they've gone through a process like this, and the municipality says, that's such a great idea that they went ahead on their own and paid for the planning and the zoning. So it's basically a real shovel-ready parcel. So you're pre-approved for 100,000 square feet. Your parking, your engineering is all done. Mr. Developer, here's your plan, file for a permit tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised if the municipality really wants to go that way. They'll use as a source.
I think that's where we want to get to with this information,
Yeah,
having the
I think
intel.
it's great.
And for us to consider making an investment, or in partnership with the municipality, or they do it, or in partnership with the developer,
Right.
or landowner,
Right.
those are where, and Jim, to your question, what do we do and all, that's a much larger conversation once we get to this, to have all these data points that we really consider, because it was a little easier when this board did a similar kind of endeavor in Warwick, because it was a town-owned parcel. We may identify those town-owned parcels that we can work with the municipality on. Some may be privately owned, but IDAs can take title. We can partner with an owner on, and those are the things I want to explore, probably with the Sandy Mathis.
Sure.
piece.
Yeah.
His big experience with that, but those are big decisions to make. We won't make lightly, but we're not there yet. When we get there, we have this intelligence. We know how many sites we're talking about. We know what the potential is. That's when I'll be bringing those options to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I've
Thank you.
enjoyed discussing
you.
with you, and I
Thanks,
look
Mary
forward to working with everybody.
Yeah, same here. Same here. So again, what we're looking for this evening is really just authorization for me to execute this agreement, which again, if for some reason something happened, God forbid, 6 months you said we have to pull the plug, then we do that, or we just pay for services.
Well, it's
rendered.
subject to attorney review first.
Absolutely, for sure. So because she's not here tonight, I don't have her feedback on it, but given her any of her feedback and changes based on that, I'm looking for you to approve that.
So I would do a motion to approve the services agreement subject to council review and approval.
Second,
Great. Do a roll call here.
yes.
Dean Tamburri.
Yes.
Susan Walsky.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Yes.
James Rinaldi.
Yes.
Vincent Odock.
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks very much. Thank you, Mary Beth. Look forward to working with you. Terrific. One other item, sir.
The phone system.
Yes, I'm not, we're
We're
not gonna take 45 minutes on this one. Can I pass these down, please?
Well, that was important that we needed.
Oh, very much so, and I'm not criticizing. I love this, if you can't tell, but Okay, great. A couple of those to pass along, please. Great, thank you. This is simple. We inherited a phone system, both the phone service, the lines that come in and the telephone equipment. And it was a bad deal. It was a bad system. The service was terrible. We tried to work something out with them. They even agreed to extend our agreement in order to do so. And it was just terrible service. So with Susan Katzoff's help, we got out of that deal. And frankly, we've been operating with our cell phones, and we have cell phones forwarded, our main line forwarded to our phones and such. And it's amazing how we've gotten on that long, but we've had bigger fish to fry than the phone system. So I did kick this can a little bit, but it's time to deal with it, frankly. So we got 3 quotes, one from a local firm that's actually doing our data monitoring at ITC. It's already a vendor we pay for. And then 2 that are out. So one in the Albany area, and then Ring Central, which is a national cloud-based service. These proposals include both our phone lines, which, our main line, direct inward dial, meaning my business card right now shows my own phone number, so we'd be able to use that. Fax line, of course, integrated messaging, meaning we get voicemail, we see it on our email, we can forward it. Really tremendous capabilities today. You can do all of this. And basically getting these quotes, I would like, as this is usually the inclination of this board, I'd like to work with a local firm. The pricing is better, a little more upfront costs, which I think they're $50 less a month than even the next best price. So in a year, I think we've covered the upfront cost for installation and programming, training, et cetera. But the rates are better, and it's a national service, meaning they have a national network that they put this platform on. And it has redundancy. I believe they have a network in Boston that we can rely on, and then it falls back to Colorado if there's a failure. So we do have that redundancy and support, security, I'll call it, of a national system that this company works upon. But we have the local feel. I know the ownership. We know the employees now because of our work with them. We call someone, it's someone in Orange County that answers the phone, as opposed to a couple of these others I did ask. Their call centers are international. So I think these are reasonable fees. We did knock them down a little bit, and really just looking for your authorization to be able to choose one of these and enter into an agreement.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
How does this affect us when we move locations?
This is all mobile. We can relocate the lines, and the phones go with us.
And do we own the equipment, or do they?
Yeah, in this option, we are leasing the equipment. Also give a little more flexibility, but it is an option to purchase the phones as well.
Okay.
It seemed cleaner if we lease, easier to move all that, and if we want to make a change in 2 years, we give everything back.
It doesn't make sense to buy it. It just.
Technology changing so quickly. I mean, that was really the idea.
I have a quick question.
Please.
Just, I noticed like the one that you like has a 5,000 minute a month, and the other ones are unlimited. I assume you don't have 2 teenage girls like I do.
We don't.
So
We don't. I'm on my cell phone so
Is
much.
5,000 minutes enough?
I don't think that's a concern at all. Yeah, we did see there was a difference there, but I don't think we're going to approach that. Not the way our office operates right now. For sure.
Okay, with that, any other questions or anything, then I'll ask for a motion to authorize the staff for a 2-year agreement for a new phone system. For which one is it?
ITC.
ITC. ITC system for a 2-year. So I asked for a motion for that.
So
Jim, second.
Second.
Susan, thank you.
Dean Tamburri,
Yes.
Susan Walsky,
Yes.
Mark Green,
Yes.
James Rinaldi,
Yes.
Vincent Odoc,
Yes.
Giovanni Palladino.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks very much.
We're going to the chairman's report. I was going to read something from Mike. He had sent it, so I'll read this. So the chairman's, he apologized for not being here. He welcomes the 2 new board members, and he's looking forward to working with them, to bringing everybody up to speed on the initiatives and projects we're working on. Today's meeting, we discussed a budget and presented for next year. As with all budgets, is a roadmap of the type of activity we hope to expect. I am full support of this budget, and I hope so, because we passed it, right? Is everything we should disperse? It was full transparency to everyone. Speaking of transparency, I look forward to working with all of you and the council in the near future to codify and come up with proposed guidelines. that we consider regarding full transparency, disclosure to host communities and the general public on the facts of each initiative and projects that comes in front of us. This board has always emphasized full transparency, and we will continue to do so. But I believe we may need to take this one step further and work on specific frameworks that we should strive to meet in disclosing project applications and the true facts of each project. This will eliminate any ambiguity or distortion and have everyone working off the same information. In closing, I really have to thank the staff, council, and our consultants in doing such a great job in a short period of time. Together, we will discuss and vote upon great opportunities in the future. With the full team and great people, we continue to make these two organizations competitive and successful in the economic development world. Thanks once again. Thank you. I look forward to meeting you and for the next month. Chairman Mike Torelli.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Vice Chairman, do you want to add anything to that? before
No,
my
it's,
report?
no, it's basically the same. Typically, Bill, we've discussed a lot of it, so moving forward.
Okay.
Executive session. you
Yes,
wanna
well,
move into it?
I'll give my report. I'll make it quick. And I'll
Okay.
point, now we're all ready for exec session. I'll go through it quickly. First of all, I want to welcome Marty Boris again. Again, thank you all for the support of adding our administrative assistant position. Marty's been on for 2 or 3 weeks now. A tremendous addition. I'm even greater than I thought she'd be. I do see a smile on Kelly Riley's face a little bit more because she was pretty overwhelmed. So she's even laughing and smiling a little bit, which is nice to see. And Marty's getting me. She's now, as she's got up to speed with Kelly and all the work they'll be doing together, she's starting to really kind of be that admin assistant role for me as well, helping me prepare for this meeting and for others. And I can tell you, if you haven't seen the difference already, you will.
And Kelly's not here tonight.
And
She
she's
got the
exactly.
knock
She was able to not be here, so I really want to welcome her. Mark and Gio, and thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on board. We do have one of the things I want to pass around. This is our current committee assignments. Yeah, I think there's enough to get to Dean. Especially Mark and Giovanni, please take a look. Certainly, our chairman will make the recommended appointments to present to the board. Very nice. But we do need help on our committees. Mark has already jumped in on finance. He made real contributions. I didn't think it looked like
That's
enough
fine.
there. I really
That's
mostly
fine.
want these two gentlemen to see it. But we'll be looking to appoint you, so we have a little more firepower on these committees. So that's one of the items. I do want you to come by for board pictures to be on I should have done it when you were first there, Mark, but if you come by again sometime just to be on the web, so you want to have your picture on there. Little paperwork. I think you do you have county paperwork? Did you already give Kelly yours, Mark?
All the
Conflict of interest, things like that.
yes.
Giovanni, you had yours, I believe.
Yeah,
Gave it to Marty.
yeah.
Terrific.
Has everything.
And then Mario gave you our own conflict of interest, our own independent certificate of independence. So make sure you have all that. And then we will do an orientation, a Zoom orientation that is pretty brief with Sue Katzoff, our general counsel, just to kind of get you oriented on the process and how we're working, a little bit about the statute and such. And then you'll do a training with an online training with the Authorities Budget Office. If you don't know them, the ABO is the New York State government department that really oversees public authorities like ours. So there is a required training for board members. I'll share that with you. If you can't make one, there are
Yeah,
other
I have it.
options. You have that already.
Yep.
Okay, terrific, great. I also want to talk about these recent articles. I emailed most of them to you. If you could take the top two different articles, and then pass the rest along to you. But thanks. Again, you have them electronically. And just a little easier to read like this. I don't like reporting on this, but there was an article in our weekly papers mostly that published a letter that was supposedly signed on to by local mayors and supervisors in Orange County, as well as the county executive and state senators Martucci and Skoufis. Cutting right to it, I'm going to call this what it was. It was a political maneuver. I happened to be on vacation when this was happening. I got a call from one local mayor who said he was being approached and he wanted to understand. In the letter, as you see, it's saying that it's demanding that we change the way we operate and we run like the Rockland County IDA, which has never had the authority to enter the pilots. They're just a conduit, and they help an applicant connect with the school district, for example, to negotiate a pilot. Now, when I told these local supervisors and mayors, I said, do you know this is how Rockland operates? And they would say to a person, well, that's not what we want. Well, this is the letter that you apparently signed on. Almost all of them, almost none of them, I should say, saw the letter, the language of the letter beforehand. Now, shame on them that they didn't ask, but it was a little confusing the way they used some local supervisors to get others to sign on. But bottom line is, when they saw this letter, most of them were outraged, the county executive for sure. They did not think it was going to the paper. They did not see the language that was written. They did not know they were signing on to this idea about Rockland County. Now, I don't want to dismiss it all, because I'm not saying that we can't be better, and that municipal leaders who I work hard to forge relationships with and have ongoing dialogue, they know that. It's not that can't get better, or that we can't, better communicate with local stakeholders about these projects. I want us to be more transparent. I want us to do a better job with that. And I want to see us do the best deals we can. The expression you'll always hear from me is, I don't want to leave money on the table for our local municipalities. We want to do the best deal we can, but not lose that project. So we're going to strive to be better. I've also tried to use this opportunity to educate both local officials, the legislature, of course, which appoints all of you and enables us to do what we do. I want to make sure they understand what we do, how we do it, and the way we must act. So I report, as you know, every month to the Education and Economic Development Committee for the legislature. I did so on Monday. The chairman of that committee had asked me, with all the recent hubbub, I'll say, if I could give this overview of the IDA, our products, and that and the other. And I did that. I also talked about how we made decisions. And I think educating ourselves in the process, as a lot of us are new to this, we have a uniform tax exemption policy, a UTEP. All IDAs by law are required to have them. They spell out how you intend, what types of sectors and jobs and employers you're looking to go after, and how you will, let's say, award your various levels of incentives for those different types of applicants. We last updated that UTEP in 2019 in June. And when they did so, the prior administration, they de-emphasized warehouse distribution, de-emphasized hotels at the time, which I didn't totally agree with, and they made or kept manufacturing, food and beverage, others as a primary goal, really, so something we wanted to see. So in our current UTEP, manufacturing, our applicants are eligible for 15-year pilots. Senator Skoufis, who obviously is taking great joy in attacking us whenever we can, especially now around election time, just got a publication in the mail today that features him attacking us for one or more of our projects. So it's certainly his thing. But there is a lack of understanding about how we must do work. When we have a UTEP, we have to stick to that. He made a comparison of Amy's Kitchen, which is still not built, proposing 600 jobs. They got a 15-year pilot from the IDA. And then Royal Wine, of course, which we recently incentivized, about 120 jobs. He misunderstood the jobs, where they're coming from. But that aside, and he compared, hey, how can you give them a 15-year pilot as well? Well, our UTEP says so. I do believe that, or I would say periodically, we should always be doing a comprehensive review of our UTEP. Most IDAs do. Again, we did so in 3-4 years ago. I think this is a new board that needs to, first of all, be full, which now you are with the last 2 editions, but develop some cohesion as a group in working on these projects. Because if we came in, Sue, the first month that you were a member, and all of a sudden I asked you to totally revise our policy on what we're going to attract and how we're going to do that, I don't think that would have been fair to do that. We had a temporary board all of last year until the end of the year, and we have a newly formed board with a couple holdovers from the temp board. And again, we just became full September 1st, I believe it was. So I'm not being defensive. It's just the time was not right for us to do that. But I do recommend, it's up to you, that we, before long, undergo a comprehensive review of our UTEP and decide what sectors, what jobs, what employers we want, what prioritizing fits right in with the work we're going to do is shovel ready, and then amend it as you see fit. So I think that's the answer, but we have to operate the way the state tells us we can operate. We don't just arbitrarily say, well, it's a few less jobs, we're going to give them less of a pilot, or we'll give them less of an abatement on year 2. Our UTEP spells out exactly what that schedule is for the abatement. So again, the public and even local elected officials don't understand some of these things. So I use the opportunity to educate the legislature. They showed, as you saw the chairwoman in her earlier, they showed their support and appreciation for the work that this board, the prior board has done, the temporary board, to frankly drag this agency through a very difficult time, dismantling a lot of systems and processes that were put in place to hide finances and to allow the malfeasance to go on. That was a lot of work for us to do that. And then we went a year without receiving an application. Well, then we're back in business and we have a slew of applications, as you know, we're doing good work. Again, I'll say it again, we want to be better and I hope you all do too, but there's a way we have to go by about it. And in this case, I'm sorry, but it really was a political maneuver. One, the way this letter, for example, the way it was gone about, and you have so many people disavowing it now, and I think we'll hear more about that. But also the way that, well, I'll give you one example. Senator Skoufis put a bill through the Senate, it passed through the Senate and died in the Assembly to try and prevent local elected officials from serving on IDA boards because he felt that they could be influenced by campaign contributions and such. He talked about when he praised the bill. Well, that was the idea. He thought that they weren't capable or there would be a conflict. But he uses this letter to rally them to say, hey, we deserve to have a say in the process. Totally incongruent. And to me, that's proof that it was a political stunt, frankly. And again, now I'm seeing all these publications where he's using this type of attack. So again, I'm not trying to dismiss any criticism or really people asking us questions in depth about what we do. I think that's right. We're a public agency. We need to be transparent. We need to answer that. I received as a result of this criticism and then using certain pieces of information presented in a way that makes it sound very explosive. I got a lot of hate email and I'm a big boy and here, no problem taking it. I responded to everyone and I have a meeting coming up next week with one of them. I have a few phone conversations I've had. I want to answer these folks. One, I want them to know the facts, all the facts. And I want to take their feedback, certainly from the public who we serve. But we're doing good work. I want you to have confidence in that. We're doing things by the book, by the letter of the law. Again, it's more transparent than this agency's ever been. We've re-procured virtually every service that we pay for so that it's done transparently. Everyone knows how we chose someone. It's all on the up and up. So I want you to have confidence in that and also the confidence that we'll continue to strive better and review the UTEP, which is up to you, and we'll leave that to the chairman to bring up next. But it's something I hope you consider going into because it allows us again to continue to hone what we do and continue to be more open, but also more effective at the same time. Any questions on what's going on there or concerns or anything you want to raise at this point? I know we've got a lot of communication about it already.
Yeah, no, the only thing our conversation to add to that is that, the pilot that was in question, there was a meeting here, open meeting. There was another public meeting,
Public hearing.
open meeting. Not one thing was said. The day we go to vote, we have letters coming. And to me, that's not representing the people either. If it was such a concern, they should have been here in the first place and it could have been discussed at that time. That was the only other thing that really had bothered me on it. Well, the work that you've done, the staff and everybody has done for that. And then at the last second to come over the letter of the day of the vote. So that was, I think, was unfair. So
I think it gave you a sense of what the intent was there.
That's
the way
why
you wanted it to play out.
Yeah, and I would just add my 2 cents on this, so to say. Yes, I do believe when the chairman gets back, we do need to set up a subcommittee to review the UTEP and keep it updated. I think that should be a living document.
Correct.
That every 24 months does need to be reviewed because visions change. In regards to the, for lack of a better word, antics that was politically pulled, because this is a public meeting here that the public can hear. The state assembly, an assembly person, has absolutely no say in the business of an IDA. As a citizen of Orange County, they are welcome to come to meetings as guests. They are welcome to participate in our public hearings. They are also welcome to put in written comments before we have a motion. And anything done after something is already passed by the IDA is either you weren't paying attention beforehand and now you want to stamp your feet, or just antics. And I don't think there's a place for it as adults in this world.
If I could, as a fairly new board member, and when I came, had very little knowledge of what the IDA did or how they operate and everything else. I got to tell you, I, as a board member, are so impressed with you and what you've done and the amount of time and effort you put into this. It boggles me, everything you're doing as one person in a small office to get this all through, you impressed me.
I appreciate it. And it's certainly a team effort. And they, back in the office, they make me look at it. They know that's the goal, that we all look good here if we come across well. So I appreciate that, but we're all working hard to do the right thing, to tell you that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, whatever we do here is done openly. I mean, it's not like maybe the previous board. I mean, the trust, the public has trust in us, even if you see all those things being written in the flyers everywhere. But at least everything we do here, we do that by the book. That's exactly continue to do that. Unless people may have their personal reasons, to do what they do or say what they say, but what is the alternative? What are they providing? I mean, if this is not good, give us what do you think is the best thing. So I think we continue to do what we are doing. Bill has been doing the best job, and everything that's right. It has always been on target. So I praise you for.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
If I could, we have 2 board members, and just for our own.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask each of them how long you've been in Orange County and
Right.
what do you do?
Sure,
Just so
right, right.
we have that mix coming in.
Chief, how do you want to start?
My whole life, I've been in Orange County. I was born in Newburgh. Went to school in Newburgh. My only time that I left was to attend the university, came back. I'm an architect. My undergrad is in architecture and construction. For the last 20, 25 years, I've been exclusively working for developers with a national footprint. And we do everything from residential to medical office buildings to conditioned storage to student housing, big multifamily, big town center projects throughout between the Northeast all the way out to California.
Were you an empty nester now at home?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have a 15-year-old.
I'm looking for empty nesters.
He had a look on his face like, I wish.
I mean, maybe close.
Mark?
Sure. So I mean, I've lived in the area most of my life. I moved up when I was 2 years old. Grew up in Cutterbackville. Went, graduated Fort Worth High School, graduated from what was then OC, now SUNY Orange. Got my 4-year degree at Northeastern University up in Boston in finance and management. Even, I've been working in and around New York City for my entire life, but I always owned the home up here in Cutterbackville. Got my MBA in finance from Stern School of Business, NYU. And so I do communications. I help companies communicate with Wall Street. So the premise is that they know how to make chips a la Intel, but they don't necessarily know who to speak to as far as investors, what to say, how to say it, those type of things. So a lot of what you were saying before, I term as targeting. So we help companies go out and find investors. So you've got 10,000 potential investors, and I'm not talking less, I'm talking people that have billions of dollars. And we call it targeting. And the same thing here. You've got all these properties, then you filter, and then you come up with those 50 or 100 that makes sense to go after. It's the same exact process that we're going to do here. We're going to start with hundreds and hundreds of properties. And by the time this whittles down, we're going to have maybe 5 to 10 that I think are going to be worth our while to see. I've also been on the other end of your side. So I've grown businesses, and about 10 years ago, we were looking to expand, and Superstorm Sandy had come in. So we had said, well, we have 300 employees in New York City. We need to defend. And so we started looking. So that whittled down to 3 cities: St. Louis, Jacksonville, Florida, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And it was exactly what you were describing. We went out with all these criteria. We needed education, we needed support, we needed all these type of things. We ended up, Raleigh offered us the best deal as far as what they could provide infrastructure wise, as far as incentive wise. And you and I have talked about some of those things that I don't think are in our wheelhouse, but there were employee incentives. If we employed 100 people within a year, we got these tax breaks, 200 people, 300, those type of things. So it's the same mentality as what we're talking about. So Did I give you enough? Did I bore you?
Leave some room to get to know each other a little better. and
Yeah.
and stuff.
So, yeah, so, and I live here with my wife. My oldest daughter is getting her doctorate at University of Colorado Boulder in tree hugging. And my youngest is a senior at University of Scranton. She's following more in my footsteps, doing business and public relations. So.
Super, thank you, Jim. Thanks for raising that. Appreciate that. It's nice to get to know. Just a couple quick things, final things for me. We had another regional IDA meeting. So again, my peers, Dutchess County, Ulster, Westchester, Green, Rockland, we met, we hosted this yesterday, it was, Marty, right? We had them in, and boy, what a valuable group that is for me. I had asked them, are you getting something out of this? Because I know I'm getting everything out of it, and they all find it valuable. We talked about the issues that we just did that came up and got a lot of support from them, of course. And we also talked about UTEP revisions, housing, incentivizing housings, and joint marketing or joint education of the public. That's something I've talked about for a while, so we'll revisit that. Speaking of marketing, we put our RFP out for that. We got 6 responses, all local Orange County firms. Marty and I are going to be working on that actually together, of doing interviews with them, and now's the time for us to implement a program for marketing, PR, education stuff. So I'm excited about that. We just formally started our headquarters search, looking in the Goshen area. So Jim, I'm going to be getting back to you on that after some of the initial conversations that we've had. So I expect to report back to you on that more. Still looking to wind down in Middletown, the accelerator there. All of our tenants received a letter that we shared with you that had follow-up from us. And they're starting to get their prepare to get their things out of there, because our lease is up November 25th in Middletown. That'll be end of everything except for the Warwick site, where we virtually pay nothing. CD rates, something else out of our finance committee. I know most of the members want to make sure we're investing every dollar that really we're not going to be using over the next year or two. And with Mark's advice, we are going to wait until we see what the Fed does, additional rate hikes, and then hopefully if it looks like enough of that has happened by our next finance committee meeting, I think it's October 11th, then we'll revisit that. Marty's now helping to repopulate our CD matrix, so we have all the current rates and such. So thanks, Mark, for jumping right in and giving our advice with that. And lastly, we are participating in economic development. Try my dealing here. We don't have a casino where you at, but it's coming. We're working with the Orange County Partnership, with Orange County Economic Development. Yeah, one more there, Mark. There we go. And with the Orange County Chamber on Orange County's first ever Economic Development Summit. So it's on the morning of September 30th. That's next Friday, right? Are you registered yet, Mary Beth?
I'm a panelist.
You're a panelist, of course you are. That's right. So you're going to be there. Exactly. So I'm a panelist also on the incentives breakout session, as you can imagine. And I think I'm moderating a session on infrastructure and digital infrastructure, utilities, et cetera. So it's terrific, first one of its kind, and I think it's going to be a great day. There are already, I think, 250 people signed up for it, and that was over a week ago. That was the case. So that'd be great. If anyone's interested in coming, please do so, and otherwise I'll report back to you after that. That's the end of my report, sir.
So just show up.
Let me know if you're coming, and I'll register you. We are tracking that. Yeah, it is free, but we need to track this coming. So and it's at SUNY Orange, the Middletown campus of the former office.
See what my schedule says.
Okay. Something on the agenda. We do, thank you. We do have our attorney, again, Susan Katzoff's not here, but one of her partners, Micah Ordway from Bousquet Holstein, will be talking about a legal matter. So if we could go into executive session, you could vote on that. I think we did that.
Motion to go into executive session for legal.
Micah, can you hear us? And
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Terrific. Mary Beth, thanks very much.
Yes.
Talk to you again soon.
All right, so we find out off the public.
Yeah, Dennis, are you there? Dennis, we're ready to go into exec session. You tell us when we're clear.
We didn't. So
We
we
didn't.
have right. So
Thank you.
a motion of executive session. I'll make the motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marty,
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the meeting. We're out of executive session, and I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, thank you, Mr. Rodak. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.